Hey everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com. Welcome to the Monday edition of Today in Sports Betting. Great to have you along. Thanks for checking us out. I'm joined as always by my partner in crime up there from the great state of New York, out there on the island, staying safe, staying home. They've flattened the curve up there in New York. It's my buddy Scott Reichel. Scott, happy Monday. How are you, man?
Doing pretty well. They flattened the curve, I'd say, temporarily until people start to actually leave their houses on a regular basis. And then you might have an outbreak again, which seems to be the case for most other states that have already opened up again. But either or, yeah, good to be back. It's nice to be able to recap live sports. That definitely wasn't available a couple of weeks ago. And the two of us had a pretty profitable weekend with the
Not bad,
NASCAR.
not bad at all.
Yeah, NASCAR worked out really well. The UFC card worked out well for me. I believe I made somewhere around 2.8 units. So that was pretty good. NASCAR made roughly north of 4 units, I think. And I also won my only bet on the McElroy golf thing that happened yesterday, where it was a 2v2, all the money for charity. Actually came down to a sudden death playoff hole, which was very intense because the last hole in the tiebreaker was worth roughly $1.1 million. But I ended up cashing on a prop. So overall, profitable weekend. Really can't complain. And hopefully this upcoming week will be just as profitable.
It's one of those weekends where you sit around and you go, I don't even know why I work for a living. I could just do this.
I mean, yes, except for the fact that about a week and a half ago, all that was left was Korean baseball and UFC on Saturday night. So there wasn't many Sunday opportunities besides virtual NASCAR. But, overall, I did watch a little bit of NASCAR, some familiar faces, and we're probably going to end up recapping that in a little while. But it was a pretty uneventful race down the stretch, if I'm being honest. I feel like Harvick pretty much led for the last 200 laps or so, and it didn't really seem like anybody was really in his way. Am I wrong for feeling that way?
Nope. Harvick did have the best car there late in the day. He did have some challengers early. Jimmy Johnson, we talked a little bit about that off air. What a bad break for Jimmy, running his last full NASCAR season, his last Cup season, and had a darn fine car there. With Roush Racing, they had that 48 car really humming, and got caught up trying to pass the 17, and 17 checked up in front of him, and Jimmy spun, went into the wall, and that ended his day. Just a couple of bad breaks. We also talked about the kid in the 24 car, the virtual kid. What's his name?
Byron.
There you go, William Byron. He was having another fine run, top 5 run. He cut a tire down, and that pretty much ended any chance that he had. So yeah, by the end of the day, Harvick had separated himself from the pack and had a car that was. And the key to Harvick's win yesterday was he had a car that worked on the short runs, and he had a car that worked on the long runs as well. And he was the only one that really had that complete package. So, it's going to be interesting, Scott, to see how this plays out on Wednesday, to see what adjustments the drivers have made. We're kind of in uncharted territory where they run a race on Sunday, everybody gets to make adjustments, and they run another race at the same track on Wednesday. So it'll be kind of fun to see what the odds are, as far as what the odds are changing, and where the good value is going to be there. So yeah, we had a fine day. Harvick was one of my picks to click. I had him at 7-1. He did okay. He was leading the Cup standings coming into this race. He had been unable to break through into the winner's circle, but that all changed yesterday with that victory up there at the Middle Pond, up there in Darlington. Everybody picking up their Darlington stripe. I didn't do as well. Eric Jones made a run. He got into the top 10. He was running 7th at one point, but he just didn't have the car to compete. And Brad Keselowski, after having a pretty fine day for most of the day, had his car go away from him there at the end of the race in the last 100 laps. And he faded down the stretch, lost both of his matchups to Truex and to Chase Elliott, who both had top 10 finishes.
I forgot, where did Jones finish? Was he a top 10 guy in the end?
Jones ended up finishing in 8th place.
Yeah, because I know that we were also talking about how there might have been some value on Jones to finish top 10 at like minus 137. So I didn't play that.
I didn't have that bet, but that was a good play. That was a play that we recommended for sure.
Yeah, and that ended up cashing. But overall, just to recap all the plays I had, I actually got pretty lucky. I had the combo deal of Harvick or Busch to win. I took it, and then Busch, who was supposed to start roughly 6th, failed 2 inspections and had to start in 40th. So that was, pretty unfortunate. I was kind of using one horse throughout the entire race. Busch somehow made it to the top 5 before the last, I'd say, 30 laps or so. But had he been at the start of the field where he should have been, him and Harvick probably would have gone 1-2 in any order. It seemed like those two were the best cars, in my opinion, who were available late. But so Harvick was a plus 400 for me because I got the Busch deal in there as well. I had half a unit on Logano. Wasn't great on the track. I'm not surprised, but at a value of roughly plus 900, I think that was worth the half unit. And I also had, in the one matchup prop that I took, I had Kenseth finishing ahead of Byron. And Kenseth came out of retirement, always has performed well at Darlington. And Byron, I said he's good in virtual tracks, don't know about actual tracks. And I said he also is a threat to crash, and you might be able to take a nap for the last 3 hours. And that's exactly what happened, as Byron quickly went from 5th to 40th, and you pretty much could just take a nap. And that was an easy plus 120 winner. So overall, solid day.
Not bad. Not bad at all. I was really impressed with Alex Bowman in the old Dale Jarrett car, in the 88 car. He had a nice run all day long, stayed out of trouble, and he got up there for the second place finish. I have a friend of mine that really follows NASCAR closely, and he gave me a tip on Bowman before that race and said he really liked Bowman, thought he was undervalued. And while Bowman really never was a threat to win because Harvick did have the best car, had a real solid run, and we'll see how that's reflected in the upcoming odds. So, overall, a lot of fun. It was nice to watch actual live sporting events. Like I said, we've seen some things that have happened at UFC with Korean baseball, and
how much of the race did you say you watched?
I watched all of it. I watched Darius Rucker sing the national anthem, and I watched the checkered flag fly, my friend. I was doing some other things.
Sing the national anthem.
What's that?
They got Hootie to sing the national anthem.
Hootie sang the national anthem. That's right.
Nice.
And it looked like he got to do it like it was taped, like he got to do it from his house or his studio or whatever.
But were there any blowfish?
No blowfish.
Damn.
No.
Damn.
Not a blowfish to be found.
Okay.
And Scott, this has been a disappointing summer for a lot of people, but it really was for me because you can tell by the fact that I'm a white guy in my 50s, so obviously I really like Hootie and the Blowfish. And they were touring this summer with a reunion concert. They were touring with Bare Naked Ladies, who are also one of my favorites. And, of course, that concert has gone by the wayside. So
I had some concerts that also got canceled around the New York area. Different, I'd say a little bit harder rock than what you just talked about. But, I had some plans in mind, and those pretty much got postponed for the meanwhile. But hopefully, I don't know how long it's going to take for concerts to resume or sports to have fans again. But, you actually don't know. So we're just going to have to wait it out, and hopefully sooner rather than later. But I know I actually watched the back half of the NASCAR race. I was switching off between the golf skin match and the NASCAR, and I found the golf thing very entertaining. I don't know if you actually know what skins competitions are in golf.
I absolutely do. I play golf.
Yeah, either or, they should add it to the circuit. It is basically match play on steroids. That should be a thing. They should have events in skins competitions all the time. I would watch the hell out of that.
They used to have a special event. I want to say it was in the middle of the season, like maybe on one of the off weekends, and they always had four of the top golfers that season playing for skins, and it was escalating. I don't know if I remember right. Maybe they played the first 6 for $5,000 a hole, the second 6 for $10,000, and
I'm not surprised that it's not that common in terms of televised, because sports and gambling has kind of always been a bit taboo for I'd say CBS and some of these other stations who never reference the point spread. But as sports betting becomes more and more common, I think that would do really well. You saw how well the Tiger Woods Phil Mickelson 1v1 challenge did a year or two ago. You got the challenge coming up next week next weekend between Tiger and Tom Brady and Mickelson and Peyton Manning. That's gambling oriented, just based on the amount that people have been betting on it, or they plan on betting on it. I think if you threw a couple of skins competitions matchups in the middle of the week, maybe on the same course that you're going to be playing the weekend on, give a couple of the top players some chance to practice the course while also televising it, I think that would do pretty well. And I think that the PGA Tour should look into doing that in the future.
I'm okay with that. Have you seen the videos with Peyton Manning smack talking Tom Brady?
Yes, I have. Quality
Very funny,
stuff.
very, very funny stuff. I highly recommend checking out the YouTube if you haven't already. Checking out Peyton Manning. Funny cat. He's a funny cat. I still think one of my all-time favorite Saturday Night Live sketches was Peyton Manning working with the underprivileged children.
That's a classic one. That's a classic one where he just throws the ball off the back of the person's head.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Just hilarious.
I think one of my favorite Peyton Manning things, besides the classic nationwide chicken parm you taste so good commercial, probably the Ron Burgundy interview with Peyton Manning, if you've ever seen that.
That's a good one. I also like the series that they did. I can't even remember the company.
Peyton's Places on ESPN is actually pretty good, if you've ever watched
What's that?
ESPN Plus has this show they started airing occasionally on ESPN.
It's Peyton's Places? Yeah.
It's actually solid. He's a good host. He's got a good personality.
I liked Peyton going to various people's jobs and cheering them on or heckling them.
That's a good one, too.
Cut that meat. Cut that meat. Okay, anyway. All right, so, we did well on NASCAR. Hopefully that'll continue. We'll maybe I don't think we're going to do a whole show on Wednesday. Maybe we'll touch on maybe on Tuesday's show, maybe even a Wednesday show. We'll touch briefly on some of our picks for the Wednesday NASCAR race. I'm assuming, is that a night race, Scott? Do you know?
I'd have to assume so. I know most of the time when they used to do the duels or they did any of the other stuff in the middle of the week, the All-Star race, that kind of stuff, it was always at night. So
well, the only question is not all of these tracks have lights.
That is definitely an issue, but I feel like it depends on the track. So if the track does have lights, I'd have to assume that there's probably a 70% chance it's going to be at night.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Even the Kansas Speedway, and it opened in 2001. When it first opened, it did not have lights. They built a $700 million stadium, and no lights. So they did eventually put them in. But.
I mean, after $700 million, you don't want to spend a couple $100,000 on the electric bill. So you got to get somewhere.
So the weird thing is that we didn't talk about this at all, and it's kind of snuck up on me because it's early this year. But next weekend, next Sunday is going to be the Coca-Cola 600, of course, for Charlotte. And the cool thing about that is pretty much a race fan's dream day, as normally on that Sunday, you know what run, Scott? You do, right?
Isn't it the Indy?
It is the Indy. The Indy 500 would run at 11 a.m. Central Time, and it would segue right into the Coca-Cola 600. A couple of drivers have done double duty. I think Tony Stewart was probably the last one to do that, racing the Indy 500, then taking a jet to Charlotte Motor Speedway and strapping in for another 600 miles. How about 1,100 miles in a race car going 200 miles an hour, Scott?
Not bad. I feel, though, personally, I don't think the Indy has the same cachet that it used to have. It doesn't really seem to be as big of a deal as it used to be, I'd say about a decade or so ago.
No, they took Tony George kind of screwed that up when they took the IRL separately versus kart, and then they had the whole where the kart drivers couldn't drive there. Now, recently they have been able to incorporate some different series back into the Indy 500. For a long time, it was just IRL drivers that were allowed to drive the Indy 500, so it certainly diluted the talent in that race. So,
I know most of the racers, once again, I talk about that with NASCAR, but same with the Indy. People don't really follow much of the circuit outside of the Indy 500. Most of the racers that I remember, with Andretti and Castroneves and all those guys, I don't even know if they're still around anymore. Andretti, I'm pretty sure, retired years ago. I'm not sure.
He owns his own. He has a team now.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Castroneves. He still might be around if you remember him.
Oh, sure.
He was the guy who climbed on the fence all the time, so I used to always root for him. But
get off the fence, you tool.
Yes, that was the guy I rooted for because I just found that completely absurd, and I thought that was hilarious. But I haven't watched. By the way, and the milk, the chugging of the milk, something about it,
Nothing better on a hot day than a big chug of milk.
They don't even give them any Oreos to dunk. The nerve of these people.
Scott, I don't know if you've ever been there, but if you have a sports bucket list, going to the Indy 500 should absolutely be on it. They put somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 people in there for race day. It is something to behold. If you've never been to the track, just simply the size of the track is phenomenal. There is a nine-hole golf course in the infield, and it barely takes up any space. Yeah. It's a phenomenal thing to see. So
I'm trying to think of all the courses or the tracks, I should say, that I've always wanted to go to on any either NASCAR or the Indy. And Indy 500 is, of course, a classic. Can't say I've been there. I always wanted to go to the Brickyard, and I never did.
Brickyard 400 would be a good race to see as well. I have seen an Indy 500. I have not seen a Brickyard race. I want to see the night race in Bristol. It's probably my top bucket list NASCAR place that I haven't been. I don't know if you know about Bristol. It's a half-mile track, and it seats about 170,000 people. If you drive by it, it looks like a shot glass. It is unbelievable, and I would really like to see a race there, because I think that'd be a lot of fun. In fact, Bristol, I think it'd be coming up here in a couple of weeks. They're gonna run at Bristol. That is one of the locations where they are going to be running one of the NASCAR races. So,
I mean,
I'm sure there's a chance we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, overall though, NASCAR, the race was that captivating, because I feel like Harvick coasted for the last, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, not a lot of banging, not a lot of positioning there. The last part of the race,
but overall, I mean, the stages are the stages. We already roasted that in the other video that we made, but really couldn't complain. I thought the race ran pretty smoothly.
No, not bad at all. So I know before we had our NASCAR race on Sunday, we had a little UFC action on Saturday night. Some good fights, man, some bloody fights as well, and there were certainly some upsets. Scott, before we get to the main card, on the preliminaries, what surprised you there? What was some good money-making opportunities? What did you take advantage of? And what do you wish you would have taken advantage of that kind of snuck up on you?
Well, if I could go back in time with the Gray Sports Almanac from Back to the Future 2, I would have taken KC by submission in the first round, which I don't think anybody saw coming. The over 2.5 rounds was minus 340. So people thought it was pretty much a lock to go to a decision. And KC by submission was roughly plus 1,000. And KC in the first round was roughly plus 900. So if you took KC, if you were one of the two people on the entire planet who had KC by submission in the first round, that was probably around plus, I don't know, 7,500 or higher. So pretty good day. I did not see that coming. That's the one that shocked me the most. For entertainment, it was definitely the Elkins fight against Landwehr. Elkins' face was a bloody mess, and he got headbutted her in the first round accidentally, so he already started bleeding. And then Landwehr hit him with an elbow to the forehead in the middle of the second round, and his face just turned red. He looked like a tomato, kind of like Violet, the girl who turns into a blueberry in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, except he was red instead. Meanwhile, he's showboating, he's taunting, he's getting destroyed in the fight. But he's gushing from the forehead, and he's just taunting, going, let's go, I'm ready. And I actually cashed in that fight. I had the fight going the distance, and I'm not really sure how Elkins could see because of all the blood coming down his face, or how he survived. But, yeah, he was a pretty big homie, and I made some money off that fight. So shout out to Elkins.
If you watch boxing, if you're a boxing fan and you get upset because they stop a fight because a fighter's got a cut or something like that, UFC, that's the thing for you to watch, because they don't let a little thing like a cut or a little bit of blood.
They do for the eye. If the eye is closed shut, they'll stop it. But if it's on the forehead, you're good to go.
The weird part about UFC, Scott, for me, you get a fighter that gets cut like that in the second fight. He's bleeding all over the place. You just pretty much just wade through that blood for the rest of the night. It's all over the mat.
Fantastic. It's so funny. It's so funny. You just see massive stains all over the octagon.
Right.
It's really funny. It adds to the atmosphere, I'd say, a little bit.
You're just rolling around in someone else's blood for the rest of the evening.
I mean, I don't really know if you think the referee or that should bring the Lysol, or if they should bring in a cleaning crew, or how you want that done. But I don't know how boxing works also, because you have a bunch of undercard fights in the same ring. Do they have time to clean the ring in between? Probably not.
No, but you don't have that significant amount of blood that's flowing in a boxing match, generally speaking.
It's also probably worse because in boxing they're actually wearing shoes.
Yes,
So,
yes.
that also factors in. But I'm a fan of it. I think it adds character. I'll say that, whatever that even means.
It is fun to watch. I will give you that. It absolutely is. It's
Not for everyone, though. It's a
it
little
is
bit
not
much.
for it is not for everyone. It's not something I'm sure that I would take the kids to when they're a certain age. I don't know. Oh, probably over 10 or 12 would be okay.
Would
But the
you go
younger kids,
solo or no?
what's that?
Would you go solo or no?
To watch a fight?
Yeah, to a fight card.
With me going to big gatherings, even before Corona, they had to be a lot of things that really fell into place. Number one, had to be a really good ticket, a reasonable price, et cetera, et cetera.
You don't find the $11 hot dogs attractive enough to go to the venue?
I don't. I just don't, man. And it's just the hassle, the traffic, the
Mhm.
people. So yeah,
I went to an MMA event. It wasn't UFC related. It was PFL. They had a couple of events in the Coliseum, so I actually went to one of them. Entertaining stuff. I can't really complain. It was really weird though, because I feel like it's actually the only sport where you'd be better off sitting higher up. Because I ended up moving down at some point when some people left. So I was moving down with my father, and we were just moving to like the third row because we started up in the boondocks and people started leaving. So you just moved down. And it's very tough to watch through the chain link fence.
oh,
But if you're sitting upward, you can see the whole thing. So I actually think it's better to be further away from the octagon because, of
I never
course,
thought about that.
you're going to have a VIP section, which you can't get into anyway, like right
Right.
next to the octagon. But you have a couple of rows that are available, but you're looking right into a chain link fence, and the referee's blocking your view half the time.
Yeah, I
So
could see
I
that.
prefer to sit up, if I'm being honest, at those events.
By the way, good for your father. I think every father owes it to his son to be one of those people that always try to move to better seats.
It was my idea to move to better seats, but I mean but yeah, he followed suit. So I've had a lot of experience just going to games, and especially with upstart leagues, which the PFL pretty much was because it's been around for roughly a year or so. They roped off basically half of the arena and they turned into a small venue thing.
Right.
And there are fights there for around 4 hours. So you have some people who just decide, all right, that's enough, and they just get up and leave. So you see an open spot, security might not be sharp in one specific area, and you go for it. And if you can get closer seats, you get closer seats.
My wife will not move up. If we go to an event together, that's where we're sitting.
Is she afraid of getting caught, or?
Yes, she's afraid of the embarrassment of getting caught. Um,
Uh, well, as the event goes on longer and longer, security starts to care less and less. So
I
that usually
understand.
tends to work in your favor.
I know. I believe me. I've studied the intricacies of crowds and large events for nigh on 40 years now, sir, and we've had some great move ups, but very few of them have been with my wife in tow. Now my kids and I, they don't care. I don't care. My goodness, somebody asked me to move seats. Absolutely. I don't give a shit.
I think the secret to all that is just ignore the security guy.
Yes. Yes.
Usually they're not trying to stop you. They're just trying to help you find your seats. So if you just say, oh, no, I know where I'm going, or like I was just here a second ago, they'll usually let you go. They don't care enough.
Look like you know where you're going. It's kind of, I will say that's the time that I use my age to my advantage. A lot of times the ushers, the security people tend to be younger, in their 20s. And you know what? They don't want to mess with me. They don't want that kind of argument. They know I look like a guy that's probably going to bitch about it. And you know what? They don't want the hassle. If you're not obvious about it, if you're not a jerk about it, they're probably going to let you get away with it. So
Yeah.
one of the nice things about being old is you get people like that generally, they don't want you. They're not getting any bonus. They're not getting a bonus for keeping you out of that seat. What do they
Now,
care? So,
my advice to all of you would be to bookmark that section of this video for later, because you can't really get into any stadium at the moment. But when you can, we just gave you a brief 2-minute tutorial on how to get basically any seat you want, with the exception of front row. so to speak.
Look like you belong. That's the biggie. Yeah, absolutely. So anything else on the undercard get you? I know we had a relatively quick TKO there with Kevin Holland taking care of business against Anthony Hernandez in that middleweight bout. 39 seconds into round one, that was pretty much all Hernandez could handle of Kevin Holland. Did the ferocity and the speed there, did that surprise you? As Holland was just brutal. He was brutally efficient. It landed 14 of his 18 strikes, and every one of them were significant. Just an absolute beatdown.
Well, the way that I saw the fight was I kind of compared that fight, different weight class, but the same premise, to the Nascimento Mays fight, which was the start of the card, where one fighter was significantly better in the stand-up going in, and the other one is significantly better on the ground. So the logic was, do you think that fluffy Hernandez could take it to the ground and submit Holland? And for the plus price of plus 500, yeah, I took a stab at it. It was an easy, no-sweat loser, and Holland pretty much beat him to pieces. Holland looked really good. His fight style reminded me a bit of Adesanya, who's currently the champion. Very lengthy, very talented, got very diverse strikes, can hit you with a ton of stuff, knees to the body, punches to the face. He's just very versatile, which I think is going to do him very well in the future as he should move up the ranks. I said that fight surprised me a little bit because of the fact that Holland just completely walked through Hernandez. I thought the fight would be closer. But I was not surprised that Holland looked significantly better in the stand-up, and then Hernandez wasn't able to take it to the ground, so he was pretty much a dead man walking. So that part didn't surprise me.
In what should have come as a shocker to absolutely no one, Fluffy lost the fight.
Happens. Cheesecake first, now Fluffy.
I know.
Caramel Thunder did win, though. Caramel Thunder won. So that was pretty good.
All right. Anything else on the undercard stand out?
No, I feel like we covered pretty much everything there.
Okay. All right. Very good. So now we're looking at the we look at the main event, and this was the fighter that you and I really liked. In fact, it was my favorite fighter. It did go to a decision between Song Yadong and Marin Vera. That was a Song Yadong was having some visa problems. He was able to get those accomplished as he took care of business. A real up and comer there in the featherweight division. Were you surprised that one went the distance, Scott?
No, I actually had Yadong winning by decision in my preview. However, I thought it was the worst decision on the card. There were a couple of split decisions. Then you had Yadong, who was unanimous. And I thought Yadong lost the fight, if I'm being completely honest here. I was expecting a split decision. I thought it was going to be very close. I thought Vera clearly won the third round. I thought the first round, Yadong won close, and I thought the second round, Yadong might have won close, but it was really a toss-up. You could have made a real argument for both fighters in round two, and Vera clearly won round three. So I thought that Yadong was going to lose. I personally had a 29-28 Vera, and yet all three judges had Song winning the first and second rounds. I thought that was the worst decision on the card, even worse than the split decisions. And I was shocked I ended up winning that one, but I can't really complain.
Well, yeah, and Vera landed more strikes. He had more takedowns. In many ways, statistically, he did dominate Yadong, but the judges, as it happens in the combat sports, saw it a little differently. So that was a good victory for Yadong, if somewhat a little controversial there. Then we had the next fight. The first three fights, the first four fights rather. All went to decision, Scott.
Yeah. Everything except the Overeem Harris fight ended up going to a decision. Jotko Anders. I thought this fight would go one of two ways. I thought Jotko would either win by decision or Anders would win by knockout. I didn't see much value in Jotko by decision. It was only like plus 140, plus 130. Wasn't interested. I had a sprinkle on Anders by knockout, and that fight was easily the worst fight on the entire card. It was boring from start to finish. Anders basically tried to tackle him for about 15 minutes and failed every single time. And it was very underwhelming. Fight was not great.
Okay. And the featherweight fight there with the EJ and Barbosa. EJ took care of business. I know you, I think if I recall right, you were an EJ fan going in, and I assume you made a little bit of money on that one.
Yeah, I had him by decision at roughly plus 210. That was a nice profit. That was another very close decision where a lot of people on Twitter seemed to be outraged. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that everyone who was outraged had money on Barboza. But, for that fight itself, very close. I thought that Barboza won the first round. The second round, Barboza lost, I'd say, the first 3.5 minutes. And then he came on really strong over the last 90 seconds. So people thought Barboza actually won the second round. I disagreed. I thought that the underdog actually won the second round, and then Ige clearly won the third round. Wasn't really close. So I actually agreed with the decision. I had Ige winning. I thought that he won 29-28. I thought he won the second and third rounds. A lot of people thought that Barboza won the second round. It really all came down to the second round and who you thought pulled it off. I thought Ige did, and for that reason, I thought he was going to win in split decision, and he did. And then Twitter erupted talking about how Barboza got robbed. I can't believe it. I don't know. I thought that fight was a lot closer than people on Twitter made it out to be. And I personally thought Ige won the second round. So I was not that shocked or appalled by that decision.
As a side note, do you pronounce his name differently every show? Didn't you say EJ last time?
I said EJ last time, and then I realized another announcer pronounced it Ige, so I think it's Ige instead. So I changed it. I've heard different pronunciations from different ESPN MMA people. So I try to keep the people guessing because one of the two is probably right.
I should have let you go first because I know the first show I called him Ige. So I think we know that's not right.
I called him Ige for the first 3 fights that I watched him.
Outstanding. All right. So then in the co-main event, you had the ladies squaring off there in the strawweight with Gedalia taking care of Angela Hill again. As the ladies' fights often do. That one went to a 3-round decision. Not a lot of surprises there. I think we both picked that one right, correct?
Yeah. I had Gedalia by decision at plus 100. Even money. Everyone expected that to happen. Fight was very close, though. Went to a split decision. Hill definitely put up a better fight than I thought she would. She actually rocked Gedalia in the second round. Brief knockdown. She clearly won the second. I thought Gedalia dominated the first, took her to the ground, sat on her for about 3 minutes, clear 10-9 round. Third round was close, but I thought Gedalia got the better of the stand-up exchanges. So for me, some people on Twitter, once again, were outraged. Anytime you take a plus 200 underdog and they lose in a split decision, they're going to be a little bit biased. But I actually thought the judges got that one right as well. I had Gedalia winning 29-28.
Well, Angela Hill certainly was the more active fighter as far as connecting goes. She connected on more shots. Gedalia was the more active. She threw more shots, but didn't connect on as many. So the percentage was lower, but it sounds like the percentage of hard shots, of significant strikes, probably favored Gedalia just a little.
What I saw in the fight, and even though you can look at all the stats from the overall fight and say, well, Hill clearly won. The issue is that Hill did most of her damage in one round. She did most of her damage in the second round. So, yes, Hill won the second round. But the first round, Gedalia clearly won. Wasn't even close. Second round, Hill won. Wasn't even close. And the third round was pretty even, but I thought Gedalia landed more significant strikes in the third round. I thought she did more damage. So even though Hill overall might have had more impressive strike numbers, most of those came in the second round, in a round that she clearly won. And I don't feel like she spread those statistics out well enough over the course of the 3 rounds.
Well, that's the problem with just fighting 3 rounds is you just don't have enough room to make up ground a lot of times. If you, in a boxing match, if you go down 2-1 in the first 3 rounds, it's not really that big of a deal. But in UFC, often, unless it's one of the big events, the championship, you're fighting just 3 rounds. So you don't have a lot of time to make up for your mistakes there in just a 3-rounder. So now in the main event, Scott, this was a real Hollywood ending setting up as Walt Harris endured the personal tragedy with his family. Certainly the feel-good story of the night as he returned to the ring for the first time since the tragedy. Everything was set up for a storybook ending, but Scott, sometimes that storybook just doesn't have a good ending, and this is the case in this fight as Alistair Overeem just was able to take care of business and scored a TKO there in the second round over Walt Harris.
The fight was crazy. I was personally upset because that was one of the plays that I wanted to win the most. I had Harris to win by stoppage in rounds 1 through 3 at plus 275 on Fox Bet. One of the dumbest lines I've ever seen. In terms of value, it was one of the dumbest lines I've ever seen as a handicapper in roughly, even before Winners and Winers, since I was betting in high school. It was probably one of the dumbest lines I've seen in roughly 6 years. It was insane. The reason why I say that is because Harris to win by knockout was minus 110, and the over-under was 1.5. And Harris to win in round 1 was plus 310. So how is he plus 310 to win in round 1 and plus 275 to win in either rounds 1, 2, or 3? It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. So I was rooting for Harris to win because I had a decent amount of money on that play because of just the value I found from it. And Fox Bet had it up for another 2 or 3 days before they finally took it down because they realized how dumb the prop was. But
Right.
it ended up losing. But at the end of the day, it's all about finding value, and that was by far the best value on the entire card. Harris destroyed Overeem for the first, I'd say, 2.5 minutes. Overeem was on his back 40 seconds into the fight, minute into the fight, and Harris is just raining fists down on his head. I thought the fight was over. I thought Overeem was just down for the count. I thought it was a wrap, and I thought the ref was going to stop it. Ref decided not to stop it. I thought he probably could have if he wanted to. And then Overeem just rose from the grave like the Undertaker meme and just completely reversed the entire fight. Harris ran out of gas. He put all his energy into trying to end Overeem early. And then Overeem just reversed it, sat on Harris for the last 2 minutes of the first round, and then sat on him hit him with a head kick in the second round and just sat on him. And then Harris just completely gassed, ended up not being able to defend himself. And he lost, I should say, by knockout. So that was by far one of the greatest and one of the fastest comeback victories I've seen in a main event. And even though it wasn't a storybook ending, it was a very entertaining, I'd say about 8 minutes or so. I recommend watching it if you haven't.
Overeem, it looks like he just didn't miss much.
No.
Connected on 84% of his total strikes, connected on 80% of his significant strikes. That's going to take its toll right there, my friend. When 4 out of 5 shots are connecting, you are most likely not long for this world unless you figure out how to put up some kind of defense. And that's
all the strikes came after Harris completely destroyed him in the first 45 seconds. So after Overeem got up and Harris was out of gas, then Overeem started to hit him with a lot of shots, mostly on the ground game. He had the back, and he just kept punching him in the side of the head, and Harris just had no answer at all. So the fight was closer than the stats might show. Harris might have been one either more conservative referee away from a win or just a couple of strikes away from a win. Very close, thinnest of margins, then Overeem completely just pulled a 180 and destroyed him for the last, I'd say, 7 minutes.
Sounded like that fight that was Wednesday night, where the guy.
Yeah, it was Teixeira and Smith, very similar. It did not take as long because that Teixeira fight ended up going 5 rounds, but very similar game flow.
No, this was more of an undercard where the kid was just, the one guy had just owned him for the first round and a half, and that he just pretty much punched himself out. And
you mean the LV fight that went to a decision?
Yeah, no, it didn't go to a decision. It was like a second or third round TKO.
In this card or the other?
Nope, Wednesday night card.
Oh, okay.
The Wednesday card. I don't know. They all run together for me. Sorry, bud.
It's all good. That's why I was curious, because I thought you were talking for a second about the Baiza Brown fight, where Brown looked very good for the first minute, 3 minutes give or take, knocked Baiza down, and then Baiza pulled a 180 and knocked him out. So it happened again in this card. Happens. I mean, that's the thing about all these fighters and any sport in general. It could look really good. Your team could be up 20 in basketball, but at the end of the day, they're all professionals, and if you leave a little bit of opening, your whole thing can flip.
Right. So, by the way, as a sidelight, if you want to find out what kind of shape these guys are in, just put on a pair of gloves and shadow box for 5 minutes. Just for starters, just put on a pair of like boxing gloves and see how you do. I was forced to box at intramurals when I was in college. We had no light heavyweight, and I think I was about 203, 202 at that point.
Okay.
So we had no one else in the house in that division. I'd never boxed before in my life, and I ended up actually boxing and wrestling in that same weight class. And two things I'd never done before ever in my life, and it was quite an eye-opening experience.
I'm
I'll just
assuming
tell you
that didn't go too well.
You know, believe it or not, the first round of wrestling, I wrestled somebody else that had never wrestled, and I won.
Okay.
And the second round, I actually wrestled a wrestler, and that did not go well.
What about the boxing? Did that go any better?
No.
Fair enough.
It was I was out of gas, dude. I was gassed by the second round, and I was in good shape. I played football my first year.
How many rounds were there? Like 5?
Three rounds, and I did not make it out of the second round. I took a couple on the chin, and said, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm not. I got my points," because we really just needed participation points, at that point. So
I'm assuming you had headgear though.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, we had headgear. But that was I was of all the things I've done in my life athletically, that was the one I was surprised it took that much effort. It was very much more difficult than you would imagine. You do that first round and you get ready to come out for that second round, and man, you feel like you have been hit by a truck.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, kind of a little brief story into my life. But it was a fun card, Scott. What do we got? We've got the next card coming up when on the 30th of May. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's not going to be this Saturday, but next Saturday, and we'll break that down at some point next week. So
we'll probably spend 6 or 7 days on it. Absolutely.
Yeah, give or take.
It's also going to be coming from Jacksonville. Are we getting close to Fight Island, Scott?
Yeah, they're still in the planning stages. As far as I know, Dana White has not abandoned that plan, so that does seem almost a given. Should probably take another month, give or take, but that definitely is the direction that the UFC is looking to go. So then again, you have to wonder how practical it is now, because Florida opened everything up again. So unless the one thing maybe that you prefer is the fact that they don't have to interact with anybody in Florida, so maybe your fighters will be less susceptible to actually catching the coronavirus. But then again, if one of your fighters does catch it on the island, you're on an island. So everything's pretty much over after that. So maybe that's why you'd move it to the island, to prevent the potential risk of any fighter getting it. But you have stadiums now in Jacksonville and in Florida. So I don't really know if you need it, but that's where they want to go. So we'll figure it out.
Well, everybody's been holding their breath with the sports getting started again. I know they've managed to remain without any cases there in the KBO. They've been playing for I want to say they just completed their second week of playing Korean baseball over there.
It feels like the second week.
It feels like it's been going on about a year and a half. So yeah, it's we'll keep a good thought and keep optimism alive as far as no cases coming up with starting to expand the sporting footprint, because I know you and I are anxious to get back to some I'm not going to say real sports, but I would say the more mainstream sports that are scheduled for this time of year. How about that?
Sounds good to me. The more the merrier is kind of my motto when it comes to live sports. Just I'm hoping everything comes back, of course, within reason. You don't want another outbreak where you go back to square one in about 5 months. But at the end of the day, until there's actually a vaccine, you're going to have to find your way to pass the time. And the more sports, the easier it is.
I agree. And that's why we're here, my friend. So, well, wrapping up, anything else, any thoughts on the card that, anything that you wanted to share that you didn't get to on the UFC card from Saturday night?
Overall, no. Besides the fact that Twitter is full of a bunch of people who curse out referees when they lose, because they feel like their opinion matters. And no offense, it really doesn't. Because whether or not you agree with the decision or if you don't, you're not getting paid to make the decision. So you might have gotten screwed over a little bit, but the most important factor is to not let that snowball and to affect your future bets. I mean, that's happened in poker. You'll take a bad beat, and then you'll go on tilt, and then you'll lose even more money because you're so upset about the way that you originally lost money. Try to avoid that in sports betting in general as a rule of thumb. Try to view everything from an unbiased and logical perspective, as tough as that may sound, and you will find yourself more profitable long term.
There you go. Very good. I know this is hard for you to believe, but there was a time before social media when you just suspected that most of the people you knew were idiots. And now you get proof of it every day. So, yeah, that's Twitter. Like, well, yeah, I can see it look good on paper. Like, well, why don't we just give everybody an opportunity to share their opinion? Well, because most people are stupid. So
happens. It's a good entertainment platform, but that's pretty much all it's useful for.
I agree.
And you got breaking news from actual insiders and stuff like that. So from an information perspective, it's helpful, but you gotta bob and weave through all the comment sections.
Yeah, you really do, and I find myself getting caught up in them as well, and I have to avoid it. The sporting comments, political comments, really any kind of argumentative topic. You just stay out of it. You're not changing anybody's mind, and you're not.
You weren't a fan of the pages of Jordan versus LeBron comment section debates because of the Last Dance last night.
I can't. By the way, I still haven't made it through the Last Dance. I'm almost finished with the first one.
The truth is, I saw all 10. I thought it was good. I thought it should have been 5 instead of 10. I think 10 was way too long. And
right.
They were covering the flu game or the food poisoning game, whatever you want to call it, and they also covered the shot over Russell. I thought it was good, but I don't know. I feel like maybe since I just already knew the story, I wasn't that intrigued. But
yeah, I think that's a big part of it for me is, it doesn't seem that long ago that actually happened, in my lifetime where you're kind of following.
I was actually alive for that, but I don't remember it because I was
right.
So,
Yeah, the only thing I want to see in 10 episodes is a remake of The Stand. That's it.
That's fair. I mean, I know that they were going through all the specifics with the flu game, and they were talking about the shot on Russell and how Pippen had back spasms and how this happened, and Rodman ditched the team to do a WWE wrestling thing. And I already knew all this information. So if you didn't, it's a cool story. But assuming most people know the information, it wasn't really anything earth-shattering. They went into depth on Steve Kerr's background and how his father was murdered and how, he ended up using basketball, stuff like that. Very good story. The truth of the matter is, how many people wanted to watch the show because of a background on Steve Kerr for about 20 minutes? Probably 0. So, it depends.
I know it was huge. Everybody's talking about it, so apparently we're in the minority. And you watched all 10 episodes, right?
I did. I thought it was good. But what I'm trying to say is that even though the story on Kerr was a nice story, and I'm not trying to sell him short, and I do like him as a basketball mind, I feel like 90%, if not more, just wanted to hear stuff about Rodman and Jordan and Phil Jackson. And I feel like everything else was kind of secondary. So giving a 20-minute breakdown on Steve Kerr in the second to last episode, I get that he hit the game-winning shot in Game 6. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I don't really think anybody was glued to their TVs listening for Steve Kerr's background story.
Could have been its own 30 for 32. You just could have gone that way with it as well.
Especially now, because he's a world champion basketball coach. And
right. Yeah, that would have been an interesting origin story and transition and all that.
I thought it was good, though. But
okay.
I thought the OJ thing was long for 5 episodes, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner, and then very interesting off the field stuff going on there. And that was yes,
certainly a nice way to put it.
Correct. So I'm not sure how you can make OJ 5 and the Bulls' final season with a lot of flashbacks involved, how that's 10. Am I wrong here? That math feels like it should be reversed. OJ for 10.
I just want to go back to the interesting off-field experiences for a moment.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest turns of a phrase I've ever heard in my life.
Well, because there's so much to uncover that it's just you have so many different instances. Because some of it was like right after he retired, and then you had the stuff with the memorabilia thing that happened also. But yet somehow you have an FX documentary on that for 5 hours, and you have an ESPN thing about it for roughly 6 hours, and yet the Bulls get 10 hours. I feel like the math is off somewhere. Am I wrong?
No, no. Although I think the FX miniseries, I think that was 10 hours. I think they were 2 hours apiece.
I don't remember, but I know they got nominated for something, for awards.
Yeah, sure.
I heard Cuba played OJ, I think.
Yeah, and you had, of course, John Travolta as Robert Shapiro.
I heard it was very good. I didn't see it, but
yeah, it was pretty entertaining. So, all right, man, there you go. What do you got on the agenda for today? What are you watching today, buddy? Anything good?
Well, I actually have a play on German soccer that's kicking off in about 10 minutes.
Bundesliga.
Yeah, so by the time this actually airs, I'll either have won or lost. But either or, yep, I took a prop there in the Bayer Leverkusen match. So hopefully they'll be able to get the job done. And we'll see. Other than that, though, really not much else on the agenda. Hopefully there's some cornhole on TV. No, actually, though, I don't know. Maybe I'll watch a movie, hang out, see what's up. But not really anything planned.
All right, fair enough.
You got anything?
I've been doing a live Facebook video every Monday night on the good news about cool things that are going on because there's so much bad news going around.
Okay.
So I'll be doing that. So if any of you are my Facebook friends out there, you should check that out. And if not, just go by there. We do it 9 p.m. Eastern time every Monday night. It's called "Have You Heard the Good News" with Scott Steen. So I'll be
sounds good.
I'll be working on that. We have a little fun and have a few laughs and interact with the crowd as well. So
nice.
That's my day. And getting ready for tomorrow, we'll be talking about finally a little NFL, a little NFC probabilities of making the playoffs is what we'll be taking a look at tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. As it looks like some of the NFL training camps going to open up this week, Scott. At least the facilities, not the training camps. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they will be opening up the facilities in a select number of locations this week. So maybe we're getting some movement on the NFL there, my friend.
Yeah, maybe. I know that we plan on covering some of the playoff props later on in the week, but we also got some NASCAR to talk about. And if we also wanted to break down the Brady Tiger golf thing, we could also do that. So at some point, we'll cover the NFL. We'll figure it out. But overall, it's good to see some vague semblance of normalcy. So maybe it'll work out.
Headed in the right direction. That's all I'm looking for at this point. Just almost the tiny imperceptible movements, but everything's going in the right direction. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully the second wave will not occur. You know what? Maybe there's a little herd immunity out there. You know, there's a lot of things about this virus we don't understand. So maybe one of the things that we haven't figured out yet is how we're all not going to catch it here in the next 6 months. We'll see.
Yep.
So, all right, buddy. Well, until then, as always, we appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you checking us out. Don't forget to check out winnersandwhiners.com. Great pieces on all the sports going on over there. So if you're jonesing to make some sports bets, winnersandwhiners.com is the place to go. Check out our pieces on the various. I know we've got NASCAR stuff that's up there. I know that we're right about the Bundesliga, and so yeah, definitely check out the websites winnersandwhiners.com, statsalt.com. Until then, for myself, for Scott Reichel, we are the gang here at Winners and Whiners, and we do this every single day except Sunday when we talk about today in sports betting. All right, so you guys have a great day. Take care. Good luck on all your plays. Everybody stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.